afternoon. This is JC Johnson, host of For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets. And we'll be getting started in 3, 2, 1.
If you love wisdom, put your mind up to the ceiling. Don't let it stay in the gutter. Don't let your heart get all cluttered. No, I did not stutter. Listen to all that I've muttered. Your life will only go well if you win wisdom or lovers.
If you're in love with wisdom, come inside.
Come inside. Come inside.
The truth will surely rescue you and I.
You and I. You and I.
If you're in love with wisdom, come inside.
Come inside. Come inside.
The truth will surely rescue you and I.
Alright, what's going on, everyone? This is JC Johnson. You are listening to For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets. And on today's episode, we are discussing the wisdom of diversity. So we're going to talk about why that's important, how that affects us as we are here in 2018. There's a lot of different things that are happening that impact us, whether it is racially, gender-wise, or any other. So we'll be on that right after this.
If you're in love with wisdom, come inside.
Come inside.
Hey, what's going on, Wisdom family? Each week on For the Love of Wisdom, we promote a new and free audiobook that we believe you will benefit from and become wiser by listening to. On today's show, we're talking about the wisdom of diversity. And so, the recommended book for this week is Unity Diversity. This book is all about how we can all come together despite our racial, ethnic, or gender differences. To download this free book today, just visit audibletrial.com/lovewisdom. audibletrial.com/lovewisdom.
3, 2, 1.
This is your girl, Juicy Jazzo, and I wanted to let you know I'm all about wisdom. Knowledge is power, power is money, and money makes the world go round. And you're listening to For the Love of Wisdom right now, bleeding out your speakers.
All right, welcome back. You were listening to For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets. And last week on For the Love of Wisdom, we discussed the wisdom of continuity. So I'm going to give you a quick recap on that before we get started. But first, just for anyone who is tuning in for the first time, this show is a show about philosophy, right? So you may ask, why the title, Love of Wisdom? All right, philosophy means literally love, wisdom. It comes from the Greek root words philo and sophos. Philo means love and sophos means wisdom. All right, and what is wisdom? Wisdom is the ability to discern. It is being able to understand relationships. It's being able to understand your interactions with people. It's being able to understand your own motives and what is best for you to do in life. It's about having good sense or judgment, right? And not judgment in a negative sense, how you think like, oh, you know, you're judging somebody, you're making them feel ostracized. Not in that case, but judgment in the sense of being able to make sound decisions, being able to be objective, right? And wisdom also, it's just the quality of having experience, knowledge, and good judgment. So all three of those things combined, right? Because it's one thing to have knowledge, but it's another thing to be able to know what to do with that knowledge. All right, so every week we discuss a different topic. Last week the topic was continuity, and continuity basically is uninterrupted duration or continuation, especially without essential change. So in other words, it's about being consistent. It's about doing the same things over and over again. It's about, being persistent in order to get the best results. Here's a great quote from The Rock, aka Dwayne Johnson. He has a good quote. He said, "Success isn't always about greatness. It's about consistency. Consistent hard work leads to success. Greatness will come." That's very true, right? So that was something we talked about last time. Definitely 2 good episodes. And if you missed it, don't worry about it. You can always get them for free download. Just go to iTunes, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher. You can get them on iHeartRadio and Google Play Music as well. Pretty much anywhere where you can hear podcasts, you'll be able to find For the Love of Wisdom. You can also go online today and look up For the Love of Wisdom just by saying, Alexa, play For the Love of Wisdom. If you have a Amazon Alexa device, an Amazon Echo or anything like that, you'll be able to listen that way as well, just so you can do it hands-free. So just go online today, look up For the Love of Wisdom on whatever your favorite podcast platform is. And also, if you want to join today's conversation, I'll be on Twitter. You can just hit me up on Twitter. The handle is @LoveWisePodcast. And in your response, just use the hashtag For the Love of Wisdom and North Coast Underground. All right, and feel free to inbox me as well if you don't want to have a public conversation, but I think it would be great if we can all just come together, speak openly on an open platform about today's topic, because I think that it is one that's really important. The theme for this show, it comes from Psalm 90, verse 12, where it says, "Teach us to number our days carefully so that we may develop wisdom in our hearts." And that's from the Christian Standard Bible. It's a really good verse that I think really sums up what we talk about here. It's about having wisdom. That's what it is. At the end of the day, that's what's most important. You can do a lot of different things in life, but if you don't have wisdom, you won't be doing them for long, right? So we have to know what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how to most effectively live in this life. So today we are discussing the wisdom of diversity, right? So last week was continuity, this week is diversity, and there's a verse from 1 Corinthians that I think really speaks to this whole idea of diversity, right? It's from 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 15 through 19. And it says, "A person's body has more than one part. It has many parts. The foot might say, 'I'm not a hand, so I don't belong to the body.' But saying this would not stop the foot from being a part of the body. The ear might say, 'I'm not an eye, so I don't belong to the body.' But saying this would not make the ear stop being part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, it would not be able to hear. If the whole body were an ear, it would not be able to smell anything. If each part of the body were the same part, there would be no body. But as it is, God put the parts in the body as He wanted them. He made a place for each one. So there are many parts, but only one body." Now, that portion of scripture right there is really powerful, I think, because it's a great analogy, right? It talks about the human body, and it speaks about how it is comprised of many different organs, and you have eyes, you have ears, you have a tongue, nose, lips. You have all these different parts of the body, fingers, toes, stomach, liver, kidney, bones, ligaments, tendons, hair, right? I mean, the list just goes on, and that's just on the surface. We're not even getting into molecular structures, all of that, because it's billions and billions of different functions that occur within our bodies, stuff that we don't even know is happening, because most of it is operating involuntarily, right? But in order for the body to function properly, all of these different elements have to work together, and one is not more important than the other. So if you were to take away one body part and maybe replace it, so instead of having 2 ears, you take away one of your eyes and now you have 3 ears, that's not really going to help you that much. It's not necessary. We already have exactly what we need, right? So if you mess with that structure, it's going to throw things off. And it's just like that with human beings as well, just as the human race as a whole. We are all different. We all play a different role in society. We all play different roles in our families, within our circle of friends, within our schools, amongst our colleagues, right? We all have a different part to play. We all have something different to offer. And when we all bring all of this, different gifts, different focuses, and we bring it all together, we're able to create something beautiful. Now, when we say that one is more important than the other, or we say that one just doesn't matter at all, that's when we run into danger of really missing out on the fullness of life. And fullness comes really by working together, by not shunning diversity, but appreciating it and really just desiring it, because it is a great thing to desire. We're going to get into a little bit about what diversity means as well, because I think that that's always important. If we're going to be talking about something, the assumption can't be that we're all talking about the same thing, right? Because I could say a word in English that means something in English, but it might mean something totally different in Ukrainian, right? So if I'm having a conversation with someone from Ukraine, we might think we're talking about the same thing, but we might be on totally different pages. Or maybe you're using slang, right? And you assume that somebody knows what you mean, but they might be taking what you're saying literally. Or someone might be using some slang and you take what they're saying literally, right? So we don't want that to happen. We don't want miscommunication, because with miscommunication, that's actually something that gets in the way of unity, something that can turn diversity into a negative thing instead of a positive thing, which is supposed to be. So that's what we have to keep in mind always, right? We have to be knowledgeable, give ourselves an advantage in that way, give others that we're speaking to an advantage too, so that we are not misunderstanding each other. Because if we're missing each other, what's the point? If we're not communicating, then how can there be communion? How can there be union? How can there be any true intimacy or coming together if we have something in the way that's blocking it? It's impossible. We can't do it. But we're going to discuss more on that. We're going to go into what this word diversity is all about right after this. So you are listening to For the Love of Wisdom on North Coast Underground, where the underground starts with you. And we'll be right back after this. Make sure you don't go anywhere.
Hey, what's up? It's your girl Queen Z from the Queen Z Show, and you are listening to For the Love of Wisdom.
All right, welcome back. You're listening to For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets. And you know we're listening on North Coast Underground, where the underground starts with you. So glad you can hang out with me this afternoon as we are discussing the wisdom of diversity. I think this is going to be a pretty good show. It's going to be eye-opening and hopefully encouraging for you. If you have been, maybe you're someone who has been discriminated against, or maybe you're someone who you've been guilty of this and you want to make a change. Maybe you just need a little bit of inspiration. So hopefully that's what we can do today. So let's look at what this word diversity is all about. Why is it important? The American Heritage Dictionary defines diversity as differing one from another. Okay, so it's making a distinction between one or two or more different things, right? So it is made up of distinct characteristics, qualities, or elements, and relating to or containing people from different ethnicities and social backgrounds. So in a nutshell, that's what diversity is all about. All right, so when you're talking about one differing from another, what you're saying is not that one is better than the other, not saying that one is more or less important than the other, but you're just saying these two things or people are different, meaning that they have something different, something unique to offer. And that's really important. Just as we discussed before the break, if you missed it, we were talking about how the human body has many different parts. So you have the right eye, the left eye, the ears, the nose, the mouth, hair. You have all of these different functions. You have different organs. You even breaking it down even further than that, you have so many different molecular structures within the human body, right? So it's not even just about the organs, the main ones like the stomach, the pancreas, the kidneys, the liver, all of that, but it even goes deeper, because now you're looking at what is it that makes up a person's DNA? What are all of the different cells within the human body, right? White cells, blood cells, T cells. You got all different things that a person may have within their body that makes up who they are, even what they are experiencing, right? Because even when it comes to sickness, sickness can affect those, different cells within the body. Sometimes your body has to produce more to fight off infection. There's so much that goes on within our bodies every day, and we don't even think about it. It's not like you have to tell your heart, oh, heart, please start beating because I need you to circulate blood throughout my body. You don't have to say that. It's something that happens without you really thinking about it. The only time you think about it is if your heart stops. And if your heart stops, you won't be thinking for too much longer because your heart pumps blood that goes to your brain. And that's how you're able to, think or walk around or do anything. So it's all connected. One is not more important than the other. All of it has to come together in order for us to be fully functional. So when it comes to diversity within the human race, we have to remember everyone is important. Everyone plays a different role, right? So not everybody can be the president of the United States. If everyone was the president, then there would be chaos because no one would be listening to one another, right? So somebody has to do that. Somebody has to work in the grocery store, because if not, you would not be buying groceries because there would be no one to take care of stuff like that. So we have to see everything as important. All functions within society are important. All races are important, right? So you can't say, oh, I'm black, so I'm better than someone who's Asian or something. Or you can't say, well, because I'm Caucasian, I'm better than someone who is Mexican. That it just is not. Not only is it being prejudiced, racist, whatever, but it's also counterproductive. It's something that gets in the way of us being able to function as a society, because we're all different. We all have something different to offer. We all have something different to bring to the table. That difference within us is not bad. It's a good thing. It's what makes us unique, and it's what makes us effective. Because you're the only you on earth, right? So there may be other people who are your same ethnicity. There might be other people who are your same age, maybe someone who's your same height and weight and build, but no one has your mind. That's unique. That's what makes you different. That's what makes you diverse or stand out from everyone else. And that's a good thing. Let's look at the online etymology dictionary, just to break down the word diversity a little bit further. So one thing it says here is that diversity is the quality of being diverse. It's the fact of difference between two or more things or kinds. Variety, right? Separateness, that in which two or more things differ. And again, separate does not have to mean segregation. It doesn't have to mean, okay, because we're different, we shouldn't coexist. We shouldn't communicate with each other. We can't bounce ideas off of one another. We can't strengthen each other. No, that's not what it means. It just means separate in the sense that they're distinct. You're able to see, okay, that's a red marble and that's a blue marble. It's just the fact of being able to distinguish two different things. If you weren't able to do that, then that would be bad. So it's important to remember that when it comes to diversity, it has to be separate. It's not like you're talking about two things that are identical. Also, it says here that it comes from the old French word diversité. This is around the 12th century, where we can trace back the first usage of this word, and it means difference, diversity, unique feature, or oddness. Now that's an interesting one right there. Oddness, what makes it so odd, right? That in and of itself is odd. But if something is different than what you're used to, or even different than who you are, it can seem odd. But isn't it in that oddness, or that difference, that uniqueness, that it intrigues us, right? It's something that makes us say, wow, what is it about that thing? Why would somebody, for example, if you like fried chicken and someone else likes baked chicken, there's something about that. You say, why is it that someone would prefer baked chicken when they could eat fried chicken, if given the choice. But that's what makes everyone different. We all have different preferences. We have different ways that we view the world, right? So if we can learn from each other, if we can come together and not fight against one another, that's where our differences can become strengths, right? That's where we can have true unity in this life. And one more definition from the etymology dictionary. It also comes from the Latin word. This is first used around the 14th century. Divertere. It means to turn in different directions. Okay, so again, this just speaks to different functionality. If everyone went left, then no one would be going right? If everyone was going north, no one would be going south. So there has to be something going on everywhere. Everything has to be impacted in order for society, for this world to really function the way that it's supposed to. So that is diversity. So now that we have a good understanding of what that's about, now we can really get into today's topic and speak further about it. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of the headlines that will be able to teach us about how diversity is happening or not happening, right? So more on that after this. You're listening to North Coast Underground, where the underground starts with you. And this is JC Johnson, For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets.
It's your boy, Tear It Up, Tommy Tom from Beyond Sports, and you're listening to For the Love of Wisdom
with your host, Jason Johnson.
All right, welcome back. You're listening on North Coast Underground, where the underground starts with you. And this is For the Love of Wisdom. Today we are talking about the wisdom of diversity. Now, we talked about a few things so far. We looked at what this word diversity actually means. Okay, and if you missed it, basically we said that diversity is differing from one another, made up of distinct characteristics, qualities, or elements, right? Diversity is what makes every single human being unique. It's what makes each part of our body unique. It all has, several different functions. And if we put it all together, we're able to actually create something beautiful, right? If we're not, so focused on one particular person or thing, but we can see the beauty in everything and everyone, that's a great thing. That's when we are, I think, really able to take out of life all that we're really meant to. So there's several different headlines relating to diversity, unity, disunity. This is something that's always in the news because it's an inevitable problem. It's something that, because of human nature, is something that we will always struggle with. But I think the key here is to get to the point where we're no longer bound by this kind of thing, right? Where we're able to actually, get past some of the stuff that catches us up sometimes and look beyond to see what's really important, what really matters in life. So this is something that's major. This is something that has been going on for a long time, right? And if you're familiar with affirmative action, then you'll know that this is a problem that is ongoing. And, there are places that have tried to make an attempt to make some change in this area. However, it's something that still needs some work. So if you look at the universities right now, right, there is still, even though schools have been desegregated and even though there has been affirmative action, things like that, there is still some resistance towards diversity within the university system. So here's a headline here. For universities, making the case for diversity is part of making amends for racial past. Okay, and this is taken from WTOP News. And this was written by the Associated Press. This was actually just published this morning. All right, so here's what they have to say. they start off by speaking about Donald Trump's desire to make some change in this area. So the Trump administration recently announced plans to scrap Obama-era guidelines that encouraged universities to consider race as a factor to promote diversity on campus, claiming that the guidelines, quote, advocate policy preferences and positions beyond the requirements of the Constitution, end quote. Now that is, I think that's a little bit of a stretch, but at the same time, it's not, So he's saying that this is going against the Constitution, and in one sense, I can't disagree with him, because the Constitution, the way that it was written originally, it was not meant to promote racial equality. It wasn't meant to advocate diversity. So in that sense, I would say he's correct. However, in this context, it's probably not a good idea to push for something to be more constitutional, right? Because that was something that was written hundreds of years ago, and clearly there have been amendments made to the Constitution. There's a lot that has changed, because a lot of the stuff that was promoted or considered acceptable then is not considered acceptable now. And that's why there are amendments. That's why there are changes. That's why there's the Bill of Rights and all these other things. So we have to take what he's saying with a grain of salt. Something else that stands out to me here is he says, or it says in the article, rather, advocates for diversity in higher education emphasize a variety of reasons. So here are the two main reasons that people are pushing for diversity. So if anyone is wondering, say, hey, why do we need more black students? Why do we need more Asian students in the school, or whatever? Why do we need more Native Americans? All right, but this is, I think, a really good point that's made here. So reasons range from business-oriented considerations. Business-oriented considerations like the need for a diverse and well-educated workforce to meet the needs of an increasingly diverse marketplace, or the belief that diversity fosters innovation and creativity, right? So this is something that's really important to remember. Like, so when a person gets out of school, right, this is what they're looking at. They're looking at, once a person finishes school, they're going to be entering into the workforce. And having diversity in the workplace is really important, because through that diversity comes innovation, it comes creativity, because not everybody is going to be approaching work from the same perspective. Not everyone has the same background, right? Not everyone has the same life experiences. So when you put different people together within a company, that company, if being managed properly, is only going to prosper because of diversity. It's not going to suffer because of diversity. If anything, they're going to become more relevant, because they're going to have a much greater reach, because the people working for them are going to come from, diverse backgrounds. So that's really important. That's something that they see as a reason for diversity. It's not just about saying, oh, we just want to make it fair, but no, they're saying that there's an actual economic benefit to diversity. It's saying that corporations will benefit from this. And as a whole, the American government, American society will benefit from diversity within the workplace. And then another reason for promoting diversity within the educational system, simply put, is there is this idea that diversity enriches the educational experiences of all students on campus, not just the minorities, right? So this is something that everyone is impacted by. So it's not just about the students who are now being able to participate or receive an education from that institution. It's also the people who normally would be there but wouldn't normally come into contact with different minorities without there being such a push for them to be there, because this can actually push them. It can push them to be more open-minded, to be more aware of the world that they live in. Because depending on where you grow up, if you didn't grow up in a diverse area, then it's going to be hard to appreciate or even understand different people. I was fortunate enough where I grew up in Maryland, and I grew up around just a little bit of everyone. So blacks, Hispanics, people from Germany, people from Ukraine, people from Russia, Nigeria, Ethiopia, everywhere. I mean, I've been fortunate to be able to come in contact with pretty much a little bit of everyone throughout my life, and I think that was really important for me. And I know the difference between that and living in areas that are not so diverse, because I've lived in different areas as an adult, and there's a big difference. It makes a big difference. And I think when a person doesn't grow up with that sense of diversity, it can be challenging when they actually do come in contact with different cultures as they get older. It can be somewhat of a culture shock. And so what they're saying here, though, is that this is a positive thing. So within the university system, it's actually good for everyone for there to be diversity. And college is a really important it's a really important time in a person's life. This is where you are really now making decisions about who do I want to be, where do I want to live, how do I want to operate in society for the remainder of my life. So this is a crucial time. This is a time where there is a lot of influence, positive or negative. So we have to keep that in mind. This is a really good thing. So more on that after this. You're listening to North Coast Underground, where the underground starts with you.
You're now listening to For the Love of Wisdom on NorthCoastUnderground.com, where the underground starts with who? No other but you.
Welcome back. We're listening to For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets. And today we are talking about the wisdom of diversity. All right, so before the break, we were looking at one of the headlines related to diversity within the university system. This was an article published this morning by WTOP News, the Associated Press, and they are speaking about this issue, which is pretty major within society right now. And President Donald Trump is actually pushing for, or I should say against, policy preferences and positions which he considers to be beyond the Constitution, which call for diversity on campus. Right? So one thing here that advocates for diversity in higher education are saying is that this is really important, that we do have diversity on campus for two reasons. One, because it's something that will have a positive impact on all students, not just minorities on campus. And it's also something that's going to foster innovation and creativity within the workforce once these students graduate, right? Because the more diverse a company is, or a particular sector is, the more it's going to grow, the more reach it's going to have, the more beneficial it's going to be. So there's really nothing wrong with diversity. Diversity always has a positive impact when it is being managed under a positive environment, when it's being promoted, when it's not being shunned, when it's not being used for evil. So diversity is really important. One other thing here to look at, this article makes mention that even within the Declaration of Independence, right? It says here that all men are created equal. Now, it then goes to say, it admits, sadly, the all men are created equal proclamation was not a guiding principle for our universities not so long ago. Quite the contrary, they fostered ideas that promoted racial disparagement and exclusion, creating great harm to the country in ways that we must still deal with today. For instance, black students were not admitted to the University of Texas and many other universities until the 1950s. Yeah, and depending on how you look at it, you might say, oh, the 1950s, that was a long time ago, but really it wasn't that long ago. We're only in 2018. So how many years ago was that? If we count from 1950 until now, that is 68 years. there's people who are older than 68 years old, right? So there's people who grew up in a time before students were even, or black students were even allowed to go to the University of Texas. There are people who remember that. There might be some people still living who were the ones who were advocating that students, minority students, not be allowed in universities, right? I'm sure that, there's plenty of people, maybe even hundreds of thousands. So we're not too far removed from that time period. So, don't think that, that was a long time ago, that's over. We're actually pretty close to that still. The article goes on to say, at the beginning of the 20th century, many administrators, alumni, and faculty members from American universities were at the forefront of the eugenics movement. Eugenics championed ideas of racial superiority. For them, the Nordic race, that is, people from Northern Europe, like Anglo-Americans, was the master race. Accordingly, they regarded Africans, Asians, and even Southern and Eastern Europeans as inferior. They believed the immigration of these groups to the U.S. should be curtailed. And that's sad, that's unfortunate, but it's true. This is how it was at that time. And again, we're not too far removed from that, so that thinking still permeates the thinking of a lot of people, I think. And it goes on to say, beyond teaching eugenics on campus, 376 American colleges were offering courses on eugenics by the late 1920s. These academic leaders and their followers worked hard to take eugenics ideas mainstream, and did so with considerable effect, according to Harvard Magazine. Now, if you're not familiar with eugenics, it has to do with ethnic cleansing, right? This is the ideology of Adolf Hitler and the Nazis, right? Saying that one race is more superior than another, and that one race that's superior really should take over, and that we should get rid of anyone else that doesn't fall within that particular race. So for Adolf Hitler, it was the Aryan race, right? And this idea of eugenics has spread across the world, and in the United States, it really wasn't dealt with until after the Holocaust. So after that, once people really started, once the Holocaust really got national or international attention, that is when it became a little bit less popular to push eugenics within the United States. I mean, it shouldn't have been happening at all, but hey, look at the foundation of the United States. It was founded by a nation who promoted, for the most part, not everyone, but for the most part, a nation that promoted and believed in segregation. It believed in slavery. It believed in there being one race more superior than another. So this has deep roots. And so it says here, so interracial marriage even was still forbidden in 16 states when it was declared unconstitutional in 1967. Coerced or involuntary sterilizations continued to happen into the 1970s. That's pretty bad. One other thing the article mentions that I'd like to share is, it says, most universities now actively work to be inclusive and diverse. They must embrace their renewed values and help lead our nation toward a more just and equitable future. And I agree with that 100%. So the university system is powerful. Now, even though people's parents should be teaching them correctly, the university still has a major impact in most people's lives and in their ideology, and that's why they need to get it right. But more on that. This is the end of hour 1. We'll be back with more on hour 2. You're listening to For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets.
Knowledge is power, power is money, and money makes the world go round.
Money, power, respect. I get it higher, learning. Yeah, I'm winning. Only get better with time. Keep got on my mind with wisdom. There's no limit. There's no limit. Get up and get it. Can achieve the impossible. Conquer every obstacle. Exhausted from grinding, constantly pushing. Do what they say I could. Life is what you make it. Knowledge is power. Don't let them take it.
If you're in love with wisdom, come inside.
Come inside. Come inside.
The truth will surely rescue you and I.
You and I. You and I.
love